the stash UI. So now I can say I want to stash out no unim and 500 RBW, or I want to stash in 1,000 unim and no RBW, and vice versa. So that really should smooth things out. And, what is currently still a rather egregious experience if you're not using Moonstream's tool. And then we'll continue to see performance improvements. I think there are still underlying issues with both Watcher and buildings that the team has and is actively investigating. And the expectation is we start to see that stuff roll out. The one thing that has slipped is audio. Audio is now moved to 1.7 with jousting. And that is our, the release after 1.6 is 1.7. That's going to be the jousting release. We may do a point server only release in between there that upgrades our Watcher infrastructure, which of course reads blockchain transactions, picks them up, hands them to our server for processing. That continues to be a somewhat brittle process. And again, we have a plan that is being worked against to improve that. All right, Sparkly, that's it for my updates. Let's dive into questions.
Perfect. Before that, the community management team has an update of its own. Starting next week, they'll be having an exciting new event that they'll definitely add a lot to our community lore, and hopefully it's going to be fun for everybody involved. Okay, we're stopping at the end of the hour, so heads up. I've also got a couple of things to clear up before the town hall questions begin. For questions regarding the mechanics of our Crypto Unicorns bounty event in partnership with Coinbase, please ask about it in general chat. We also have a dedicated FAQ for all of your questions. So without further ado, let's get this started. We have a 3 questions per person rule. If a question has been asked previously, you'll have to ask something else. To ask a question in voice, please press the request to speak button. The button looks like a raised hand. You can queue up at any time. Once you accept your request, you'll see a green bar at the top of your Discord. Click accept to begin speaking. Once you are unmuted, feel free to ask your question. We also have questions from members of the Unicorn fam who couldn't make it on stage for various reasons. It's on the Town Hall Questions channel. Take note that we prioritize spoken questions over written ones. You can also head on stage and ask any questions that you may find on that channel. First up, though, are the anonymous questions. You can submit this too on the Town Hall Questions channel. We accept a maximum of 5 anonymous questions per Town Hall. And right now we have 3, so if you have 2 more, feel free to ask. Okay, here is the first question. Each town hall, I will remind you about this on OpenSea until it's fixed. How is it going with the OpenSea issue?
Yep, we produced a report of remaining unicorns in land that are locked and listed, and OpenSea acknowledged receipt of that on Monday. So anyway, LG Jared needs to ping them is the TLDR on that front. But my expectation is they will rerun it, and at that point we should be good.
All right, amazing. So LG Jared is taking care of it. Don't you worry, everyone. Number 2. 4 town halls ago, we expected videos from YouTubers within 2 to 3 weeks. Any progress on that?
We have 1 fully signed, 2, going back and forward on the contract front. It's very frustrating to me for me to hear things like 4 town halls ago. I get it. I'm going to stop giving any indication of dates, so I stop getting questions like that. But yes, we're working on it. Obviously, this Coinbase wallet promo went live yesterday. Again, we have 1 signed. I believe they start now in November. That did get pushed back. We have 2 others that are in contract negotiation. And so, yeah, making progress on that front. Stay patient, friends.
Okay, you heard that, community. By the way, you guys have to be fair with us too. So 4 town halls ago, it's not that we expected videos from the YouTubers right away, but we were in talks with them. So these things take time. And when we share something to you, out of excitement, because we're really excited about what we do here, we let you know that there's a rough time that we're looking for. But as you know, some things get delayed and some things need a couple more extra days to get it right. We do have something called a community accountability records form that you can fill up in our quick links channel if you have a question about how a certain feature is going or how a certain update is going. And then we can get a table started up for you for accountability. It's not that we don't want to answer those questions. It's just that, we're excited when we tell you about them. But at the same time, these questions are something that get updated. Okay, let's have the last anonymous question. We are seeing QE for UNIM. Any plans on QE for RBW?
Not, excuse me, not currently at this time. In both cases, I think we're in a really phenomenal position. Something that I don't think people really understand is like if you look at Axie, right? Axie had something like 13 billion SLP burned over their, history and something like 56 billion minted. And the delta there is 43 billion, right? And so even at the current market value of SLP, there's 129 million or so worth of SLP sitting out there in the open market. And I don't know exactly where their treasury is post the kind of refill, post the hack by the Lazarus group. But again, that's like an incredibly challenging position for them to be in. As a central bank, they have no ability to um, do anything given the kind of vast amount of SLP they leaked out into the open market. And then you take a counterpoint, it's like PegAxie, right? PegAxie, 11 million burned, 18 million minted. The delta there is 7 million, but at current price of Viz, it's like $700 or something crazy, right? I mean, it's true economic collapse, right? Their currency didn't sustain. And then you have unicorns. We have 180 million burned. We have 373 or so million minted. And the delta there is 193 million, which at the current market value of Unim is something just under $1 million. And we have 20 plus million in the treasury currently, right? So you have to understand as a central bank operating these currencies, we're in a far healthier position than at least the two groups I just mentioned. And so the focus on the QE front continues to be Unim. That's not to say at some point we won't do the same with RBW, but for now the focus remains on Unim.
All right, thank you so much. We have another anonymous question sliding in. If and when CU becomes massively successful, FUD, that's when. I can see there being potential FUD surrounding off-chain portions of the game, especially FUD about off-chain game economy changes / manipulations that would benefit Laguna Games rather than the game economy itself. Does LG have any action plans surrounding those kinds of accusations?
I guess two things are top of mind. One, all the game data is technically public, even the off-chain stuff. I mean, Kaiser, Max Brand, and many others rip it every single time we do a tuning
Yeah.
update because you can see that, and we don't. It would be very hard to hide in the first place. And again, it's an open economy, so we choose not to even attempt to hide it. So it would be very hard. Again, yes, it is off-chain, but it is not opaque. It is actually very public. So you see all of our tuning files. You know what it takes to upgrade things. And whether we made a mistake or attempted to do something malicious, I'm absolutely positive people like Kaiser and Max would catch that and be all over me in the founders channel and in the council channel and stuff. So, yes, it is off-chain, but it is not opaque. So that's a very important distinction. And then the second piece is this data warehouse, which our data team is finalizing the setup on. That will expose, anyone that, wants access to that and, signs up, access to hourly dumps of our off-chain event data, right? So the number of harvests and plants and gathers and all of that kind of stuff at an aggregate level. You'll never be able to search on a wallet or per individual basis, right? But it'll be aggregate data. And so I would say both of those things, the fact that first and foremost, our data is actually open, even though it is off chain, and the fact that we're going to be putting up kind of this data warehouse. means that, the community will have the information that they need to know that we are not, doing anything malicious on our side, even though some of the game will remain off chain. My hope, of course, is more and more over time, we push more data on chain. But for now, I think we're in a good position in terms of the level of transparency that we have, even though there's portions of the economy that are off chain. That's a great question.
Yeah, it is. So we want to hold ourselves transparent and accountable, and we have an amazing community that we want to do the best we can for. So we definitely encourage conversations about this. Feel free to ask on the strategy forums and the game economy forums, and feel free to message any of the CM team about this. We want to encourage open conversation about this as much as possible. And by the way, we're going to have the data warehouse form up after this town hall. Okay, that's all of the anonymous questions. Let's move on to Sigarian. Come up to the stage, buddy. Hey,
Morning, guys. Morning, Aaron.
morning.
Hello, sir.
So this latest news that we just had this week with the Coinbase was actually very surprising. Really good stuff. I'm actually just wondering if you could add more to just how this came about and basically what you hope to get. I hope to accomplish with this partnership with the Coinbase wallet.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge shout out and credit goes to Brian, our CMO. He took an initial intro to Daryl over on the Coinbase side and has been working very hard to get this through. As you can imagine, with Coinbase, there was a lot of legal red tape to kind of get through, and I think Brian very masterfully, got that done. I'm always very happy when somebody owns something end to end. And so again, huge shout out to Brian for all the effort he put in getting it done, and also fighting to ensure that we would get things like push notifications and placement in their newsletter and all of that kind of stuff. So this is an experiment like everything we're going to try on the marketing front. And I felt it was a really exciting opportunity to gain exposure to the Coinbase wallet users. Again, to be the first kind of game DApp to get featured, I think is a big deal. As I was kind of discussing in the Founders Channel yesterday, you can imagine that this is kind of the first step in the exposure that's really needed to get listings and things of that nature. So I would hope that this is the first of kind of many partnerships with Coinbase. I actually did a town, I'm not sure I would call it a town hall, but I did a fireside chat, I guess, and there were about 80 people from Coinbase that attended that and actually asked really thoughtful questions. And so I think one of the cool things is a lot of the exchanges are realizing that, DeFi is kind of especially in the bear market, is really struggling. And so they're all obviously hungry for what's next. And it's very cool to see that there's general agreement, not just with Coinbase, but with other exchanges we're talking with, that gaming is a really compelling kind of avenue and something that they want to support. And so anyway, any follow-up to that, Sigarion? But that's kind of my high-level take on how it came about and what we're looking to get out of it.
Not really. Just I think with the Coinbase marketing, I think it shows the kind of quality that you guys are pushing for, and that's actually it's really good to get with Coinbase because they're huge. So this is really great.
Definitely. I think it's a first step, and I hope to see many, many more things like this in the future. And I hope it's not the last time that we partner and do something with Coinbase. So we'll watch it very closely. Again, it's an experiment. It's something that, we'll see how much it really inflects KPIs, and we'll learn from it and continue to apply those learnings as we roll out our kind of larger marketing plans. But yeah, it's an exciting win. It was something that, as you can imagine, with Coinbase, again, we had to very much kind of keep it under wraps. I know Dave versus Axie was in kind of asking questions as to why yesterday. And I think he was more confused as to why we announced it before Coinbase, and they actually wanted us to announce it. And there was literally like a 1 hour timer. Anyway, it's been very intense working with them. A lot of lessons learned, and I think it's a huge sign that we were able to kind of get through all of that and ultimately land the first games partnership or promo partnership with Coinbase. So it's real
Awesome.
cool. Thank you for the question coming up.
Yeah, looking forward to that newsletter. I actually have some follow-up questions, but more in depth with I guess the gameplay and the meta right now. So I know the communities kind of have this not the very most positive view on, like, I guess, seed bags. I was just wondering what your take is on that, because everybody's always trying to do the min-max of whether seed bag is more efficient versus just planning 3 times a day.
Yeah, for sure. I've absolutely seen that feedback. I hope that the community understands we didn't force you into using seed bags. It's very important to understand we designed it specifically as a convenience. So you have to take a step back and go, okay, the Laguna team has spent most of their time as game developers in free-to-play mobile, right? So in free-to-play mobile, you monetize by allowing a player who's willing to spend to progress quicker than a player who isn't, or you allow them, they spend for convenience, right? So the idea that I can craft a seed bag and spend a little bit of rope and a little bit of unim to not have to come back 3 times a day and collect is resonating with our most of our larger players in terms of the scale of assets that they have because of the convenience there. Now, again, we could have forced it and made it more efficient to use seed bags to force those extra sinks. We chose not to do that to start. That's not to say that we won't angle people towards that feature over time by making it more efficient. But again, this is like free to play 101, and it's exactly how you would monetize a free to play audience. Is you would put up a feature that the spenders are going to use to reduce the amount of time that they have to spend in the game. Like a perfectly balanced free to play game would give someone with infinite time the ability to compete equally with someone with infinite money, right? That is like literally a perfectly balanced free to play gaming experience. And so the whole idea that I have the ability to craft these seed bags to save myself time, I'm going to take that. Other players are not. So again, right now it's very free to play. I think the anyone criticizing it doesn't really understand why we built it. And I hope they appreciate that we didn't force you into this. But we're going to watch the data, and we may over time make it more efficient, which would be which would kind of force you to start utilizing it and create higher sinks on the game. But initially, we wanted to experiment and see what level of players would effectively pay a little extra in terms of rope and unim to have the convenience of not needing to farm 3 times a day. So I hope that makes sense, Sigarion. But TLDR is like that is the bread and butter of free to play, and that industry obviously generates a ton of revenue. So we want to experiment with things that work very well in free to play and see how they work in this Web3 open economy paradigm.
Absolutely, that makes sense to me. Well, on a lighter note, quick question about those seeds for the tier 1 items. Where are they going to come from?
Of course, poop collection is going to be very important on that front. There'll probably be some, let's call them loot box events and things that help kick that feature off.
Okay. All right. That's all I have for now.
Cool. Thank you for coming up. Great questions.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Sigarian. Okay, let's have a question from Felipe Petillo 69. Can anyone ask in Town Hall, will the lag end when harvesting with babies, and when?
Are we talking about berry collection lag?
Yeah, we're talking about berry collection lag.
I hope so. I don't have a direct answer on that, but it is frustrating for me as well. The client team is currently working on, obviously questing is huge, and then these additional UX updates that I mentioned before. We do have an engineer that's actively investigating the berry collection lag that occurs. But I would be very curious to know the hardware and device specs of the individual that asked this question, because there is a certain, it just depends. If you're running the game on a toaster, it's going to be really hard for us to optimize it any further than we already have. The biggest constraint with WebGL is it is single thread. So every single thing on the CPU is running through that one thread, which is hilarious because mobile has been multi-threaded for years now. So we actually took a pretty big step back in our ability to leverage the hardware of a device with respect to WebGL. So again, if you're rocking a really beefy machine and still seeing lag, which I am on an M1 Mac, obviously there's room for improvement there. So I would say there's an ongoing investigation. We have a client engineer. Shout out to Queets from our Manila team, who's been doing some work on that front.
Thank you so much. Okay, so Felipe, I've reached out to you. Let me know more about your specs so we can talk about
I'd be curious to know because that's really helpful for us. We can kind of use the Unity emulator to simulate different hardware levels. It's not perfect, but it does help engineers.
Yeah, and another helpful thing is when people take a recording of their gameplay so we can see exactly, because when you say lag, there's a lot of possible places where lag can come from. And if you take maybe a recording of your gameplay, it'll help us observe your experience and narrow down where we can optimize these things. So that'll really help. Thank you so much. Next up, we have a question from L. When shadow porn staking?
Yeah, that one's been a bit tough. The Moonstream team had an engineer leave due to burnout. Very sad to kind of have that happen. And so it's gotten slightly delayed as a result of that. But it's to the point that we're lining up audits against it. And I expect it's probably an early November thing based on what I've heard. So it's a bit delayed on that front. You're going to start to see, though, the community team roll out events in the near future that effectively prepare for that and lean into a lot of the UGC stuff that I pitched in the Roadshow deck, which is very important because we need to get our world history brief so I can go to the Gotham group and others that we are chatting with. So we can find a writer for both the comic book and kind of the TV show as planned. So again, you're going to see some events that are kicking off and leading up to the launch of that. The website itself is nearly done and effectively just waiting on finalization of the smart contract so we can wire it up, test it, and then again, trying to get an audit against this one. So yeah, that's where Shadowcorn Throwing Shade is at.
All right. Okay, and then another question, when can we add more than 9 lands? I have a reminder to everybody for this. For any when insert feature here, you could always fill up the form at the quick links channel. It's called the Community Accountability Records form. Just fill up whichever feature you want to ask. That's like when insert feature here, and then we will take care of it for you.
Yeah, the answer's testing is ongoing. So the client team has, increased the ability, increased the number of lands limit upwards, and we're trying to figure out what the bound of that is going to be from a technical perspective. It's also obviously very important from the tribe's perspective, and so understanding kind of what we're going to have to do there is pretty important. But I think the crazy initial test was all 50 lands taking up kind of the entirety of the screen. So we'll get results back from that in the next few days and then begin looking at ultimately where we want to land. I think it's going to be less of a performance constraint and more of a design constraint, because I kind of look at it as like you take 1 million, you divide it by the number of lands per account, And like, obviously people will continue to multi-account no matter what, I would think. But um, you could expect, okay, that's like the maximum number of DAO um, that we would expect playing the farm sim. And I think to a certain extent, we want to balance that a bit. Um, I think, again, it is way more beneficial to have more players in the ecosystem than less, always. And that's a North Star metric for us. And so you might see us come back and say, all right, we're going to 4x4. You can do 16. Again, I'm throwing out numbers here. And that's likely way more of a design constraint because we want to take whatever 1 million divided by 16 is and set that as kind of the target for the total number of players over time that we might expect to onboard into the farm sim and play the farm sim. So yeah, that work is ongoing and is currently being tested.
All right, perfect. And here is a question from D172638227. The team and founders and logs are geared up to begin here soon, which opens the possibility of these tokens being staked. With the team remodeling the V2 contract, how does LG plan to handle the ill-placed incentives that arise when equity positions are tied to gameplay? IMO, this creates a problem where the team is incentivized to play the game, which creates incentives to influence/prioritize growth for their holdings and not the communities. Please expound.
Yeah, I mean, the way staking works, that's an interesting question. I can't answer that because of something I'm working on with our investors and the team right now that will address that issue. And I guess I'll just kind of leave it at that. Obviously, the chunk of tokens that are in the hands of LG and our investors, those accounts, those addresses are all doxed, and it would be my expectation that they're not receiving boosted rewards. If they choose to stake, it would be at a no boost level, and it would be obviously passive and geared towards voting. Now, if the Delphi crew is out there and actually playing the game and in Discord and doing it, like, are you really upset that they've got some boosted badges? I don't know. I wouldn't say that's necessarily misaligned because you want the team and investors staking their tokens instead of dumping them. But that said, I'm working on a big initiative that I hope to announce probably in early November, which I think the community is going to be very much in support of. And it will eliminate the concern that was just raised. And I'll leave that at that.
TLDR, we have something in the works for it. Thank you so much for that question. D172638227. Next up, we have Johnny Fiat. With regards to giving each coin a personality and more utility, AR, merchandise, etc., are there any exciting things coming to that you can touch on? There is a cool project called MetaVoice, where it might be interesting to attach a special voice to each unicorn.
I'm definitely following projects like the one just mentioned pretty closely. I'm being able to attach a little bit of AI to these things. And again, my dream, the silly dream I've had since a kid is like, how do I get a unicorn in AR or a series of unicorns running around my desk, interacting with each other and me? And like, that's the dream. I don't know. Is that 5 or 6 years away? Who knows? The pace of progress that we've seen with things like Stable Diffusion, I think, is incredible. And I think we are going to enter a world in which you're going to be able to have deeper and deeper interactions with digital creatures like our unicorns. And so kind of like I pitched in the roadshow deck, and something that I've believed kind of from the very beginning is NFTs can be this layered kind of platform in and of themselves, right? And the first layer is just this immutable base layer, which we've already achieved. Like if Laguna was to fall off the face of the planet tomorrow, the unicorns would continue to live on chain. And then you begin to layer, things like AI. Our first step is, of course, Unagachi, which is a very, very simple version of that to start. But again, if that really resonates with players, I would love to continue doubling down on that and increasing its sophistication. And I really do believe we're only a few years out from some really incredible stuff. I don't know if you saw it's always creepy when Zuckerberg releases something, but yesterday they released a video of him. And again, well, okay, I say a video of him, but it was not. It was just an avatar. You have to watch it to the end to really tell. It's very incredible what they've been able to achieve, but it's also very scary when you look at deep fakes. So again, this is something I'm very interested in, and I view Unagachi as a small but first step in the right direction there, and something that I would hope we kind of continue to invest time and effort into. Broadening that to just the overall brand and IP and getting corns in the real world, we've begun a series of discussions with various groups. Some of them kind of smaller, like Tokido, which recently launched V Friends in every Macy's in America, run by my friend Darren Graham. They're also working with Cool Cats and I think Gutter Gang or somebody else. They're a potentially great partner, and we're waiting on kind of a presentation from them on what their plans would be to commercialize unicorns and get the IP out there in the real world. And so that's very exciting. We've also begun discussions with some very, very large toy brands, I will say. And these toy brands have already, one of them at least, has already experimented with NFTs and even putting like NFC chips into toys that are kind of tied in. And so, yes, I would say great question. I'm very excited about the potential of continuing to kind of build and flesh out our brand and IP, both kind of in the real world, as well as tying things like AI into the product so that, again, you can interact with these things. And the futurist like kid in me is very excited for, I believe, certainly in the next decade, you're going to be able to interact pretty deeply with, with these things. And that would be a very incredible thing to have for sure. So sorry for the rant, but that's something that does excite me a lot and plays into many of the things that have excited me just really since I started being broadly interested in software and technology as a teenager. I mean, investigation has to be the first step, but it does not and should not take weeks. This is something that I've put forward to our CS team, which really did only recently receive the level of access that they need on our back end to complete these investigations in a timely manner. The reason they were taking weeks is it needed to be escalated and an engineer needed to check it, and our engineers continue to be very, very busy. So now the CS team can investigate and resolve things. And we've seen resolution times cut from, I think on average it was well over 48 hours. Again, there were people who were stuck for a long time. At this point, that is no longer the case. And so we've seen drastically shorter wait times on that front on average, as well as a drastic increase in player satisfaction related to the timeliness of their queries. So Rambo, investigation is absolutely necessary. Should it take weeks? Absolutely not. The target is 24 hours.
All right, there you have it, folks. Another question we have is from GD Verse. I don't have the daily active users data, but Discord is growing, which means DAO might also be growing. However, we keep on having the same stuck issue, which is our biggest problem since day one. Is there a permanent fix for this? Can you share the retry loop process?
I mean, I just went through a retry this morning that was flawless without a refresh. So there have been a lot of improvements to that. this issue, if you are in Discord, is being broadcast at a level that isn't commiserate with its actual, like we see maybe one or two of these a day, even less now, right? So this is not much of an issue unless you're sitting in Discord and you're seeing complaints from the few people that it tends to affect. All of that said, the watcher improvements that I discussed at the beginning of this are the permanent fix to that. So again, anyone who was here from the beginning has already seen massive improvement to that flow, and I don't want to skip over the large amount of work that we have done that has gotten the retry flow corrected. But things like the integration of Chainlink v2, as well as our watcher update, are the what I would consider to be permanent fixes for this issue, which again is 100x smaller than it was, even 90 days ago. So there has been enormous improvement on that front. And the kind of killing blow will be watcher improvements as well as the Chainlink v2.
Okay, thanks. This might be a follow-up question to that. It's from NDR.
Sure.
If an account is stuck, is it possible to make accounts playable but disable all transactions on-chain?
We do make accounts playable. If you've been stuck and you have submitted a support request and that support request has not been answered within 24 hours, ping our CM team. There should be no one who is stuck like that with the tools that we have in place, period. That is an unacceptable thing in my mind. So if that is happening, ping our CM team today, and I'm going to make this my priority because this should not be happening anymore with the tools that we have available. We have the ability to unstick an account without an engineer's involvement, even if an engineer ultimately needs to come in and resolve the blockchain transaction itself. So whoever asked that, I'm very, very concerned if you're sitting here with an issue that is blocking you from gameplay. That should not be an issue at all, and is something that for many weeks now we've had the ability to fix. So if that is ongoing, I want to understand it today, and I'm going to make it my mission to talk to the people at Laguna necessary to ensure that does not happen.
All right.
All right, you heard him, community. So if you have any concerns about your stuck accounts, just send me a direct message and I will take care of it for you. So chat's going off. Somebody said they're feeling Aron's BDE today. Nice. Okay, let's have the next written question. So during
Changing the settings on my OBS. All right, this one's from Shicom. During the Shadowcorn staking, is there still a utility for the unhatched eggs and for late hatched eggs?
Specific to unicorns or shadowcorns? I guess it doesn't matter. There is no utility for eggs. Hatch those things, people. Hatch those things. Eggs are a feature that has two primary uses. One is the gotcha moment, because you don't know what's in an egg until you hatch it. So I believe there will always be a consistent demand for the people that want the gotcha moment, right? And are willing to purchase an egg and kind of bet on it. And then there's, of course, the risk that you sell an egg, which happens to have, a mythic of some tier inside of it, right? The second use of eggs is simply a extra step that slows down overall breeding, just generally, right? And so unless you intend to sell an egg to someone that wants that kind of gotcha reveal moment, there's no point other than to hatch them and progress. So we don't plan to put or add any utility to eggs for now.
Okay, thank you so much. Next up, we have Invoco. Are the random farming plot upgrades for harvesting nerfed or disabled? Without mentioning it in the game updates after the recent patch. I've been collecting data every week on 4 accounts and I've never received 0 upgrades.
Farm bonuses were fully QA'd, so they should be working as expected. And I don't have any other information on that front.
So Invoker, please reach out to me and create a ticket on this so that we can follow up on this with the devs. Thanks for sharing. Okay, next up we have Kylaxy. What happens after the Shadowcorn snapshot? Are we still on track for the Shadowcorn staking schedule? So this has been mentioned earlier. We have Lemonade. Do quest buildings have boost capability based on their land type? Do they level up?
Yes, they level up like other buildings.
All right, perfect. Would you happen to know what happens when you level them up?
I'm going to let the community discover that when we ship the feature. But you can imagine it's similar to other buildings in that you'll be able to access higher tiers of things. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, loving it. All right, from Jackie Ace. When is the 1.6 patch?
No dates, Jackie. No dates. You can't pull a date out of me. I can tell you it is targeted for this month, though.
You tried, Jackie. You tried.
We tried. Valiant effort. Valiant effort.
So from Rise B, is there any news about the benefit of 0 breeding points yet? I read something, or is it just the 15 energy points?
Right now, it is just the 15 energy points. If you go the very bottom of our blog post on the energy changes, there are 3 bullet points which indicate ideas/plans that we have for what you can do post hitting 0 breeding points. So I think it's very, very likely, but of course design is not here and I'm not the design team, so they reserve the right to make changes. But very likely that we'll have, you can only burn a unicorn that's been fully bred out for soul crystals, which of course will be necessary for Shadowcorn Ascension, as well as other things. And then we're also looking at future evolutions to unicorns as well, and those would only be possible kind of post hitting 0 breed points. So right now the utility is the 15 energy that you get, but at the bottom of that blog post we tease, I believe, 3 separate reasons or future utilities for fully bred out corns. I'm actually super happy with that change and that system, as it creates kind of this, obviously this incentive to continue breeding out corns, which really wasn't present prior to this change, which of course sinks more unum overall. And then the really fascinating thing is the idea that, okay, corns that aren't bred out actually kind of have less utility now and potentially less value, which acts as an incentive for you to list those in the marketplace for new players who are coming in. And so I think that especially as we approach our growth phase, that tweak to the overall meta and systems design is a really, really positive change that lines up very well with our growth plans. I mean, one of the things that's really interesting, many of you probably have noticed already, is the idea that we have very, very, very little assets actually listed. So any amount of demand on that front is obviously going to drive prices up. And despite all of the corns that have been bred, involved, and produced overall, we're going to need so many more if you imagine just trying to onboard even 2,000 additional players. It's one of the reasons that overall we've been comfortable allowing Unim to inflate a bit and things of that nature, right? In combination with the idea of when you look at Unim market circulating supply and value, right, relative to the treasury. Like, again, this is one of the reasons that we're comfortable in the position that we kind of sit, knowing that even a small amount of demand will dry up the very small amount of liquidity that we have around these assets. In the next town hall or two, I'm going to really kind of take the wraps off our growth plans, particularly the direct-to-consumer efforts that I've been mentioning. That is going to kind of require us all to work together and get more supply out there on the open market so that we can build these starter bundles and things for all the targeting and again, the marketing efforts that we're going to have. So anyway, that's a broad answer to that question, but generally very, very happy with the tweaks and the changes. And there will be planned utility for corns that have been fully bred out. I think the ideas in that blog post are pretty exciting and likely to happen.
Likely to happen. Thanks, Aaron. And for people who do have several thoughts and suggestions about what additional utility we can add to these coins that have been bred out, the Strategy and the Game Economy Forum is open for you to make your suggestions. We lurk there a lot of times. Even if you guys think that we're not reading or watching, trust me, we are. So please make sure to make your suggestions over there. We will take note of them. And if they're a good suggestion, we can discuss it with the design team. And before you know it, we might be just publishing a Medium article with your suggested feature. So give it a try. Okay, it is 11:56 my time. We have 4 minutes left until the end of this town hall. Let's have a last question. So Lemonade says, within the past few months, have you seen any other games in the space that you would consider taking inspiration from regarding game design, tokenomics, and governance?
That's a tough question. I've paid the most attention to, I think, the games that are like fully on chain. Dimension X is one that I will mention. They're on the Flow blockchain, which makes this a bit difficult. But I think the systems design behind how they release heroes, so they kind of release a certain amount of currency per season, and that currency is then sunk to mint new heroes. So they kind of have this very interesting constraint around inflation that I think is really very interesting. It's kind of similar to the idea of like the Dark Forest Act 1, where there was a certain supply of unicorns, you're staking them. There was a certain supply of shadow corns. We very specifically were able to kind of tune that such that most people who had been around and obviously were Genesis unicorn holders could access or could get to the point they could do a guaranteed shadow corn pool. And so, yeah, Dimension X, I think, is doing some really interesting stuff with the design on that front that I think is very interesting, is very compelling. There's a couple projects, one that I actually recently started advising that has not released anything more than a demo yet, that is building a very true to the genre 4X strategy game that's fully on chain that I think is very exciting. I think it'll be on ETH mainnet. I think it can be really competitive with like Wolf Game and Wizards and Dragons and things of that nature. And again, very fascinated by games that have fully on-chain economies. Otherwise, it's been hard, I think, to pull inspiration from games that are currently launched. And I always kind of am hesitant to pull too much inspiration from teasers and things that haven't released yet, because we don't really understand what or how they're going to perform in a live environment. Towards the end of this month, I'm giving a talk at the Gamer Forum at Cal Berkeley here in the Bay Area as a part of Game 7. And I'll be really specifically kind of focusing in on, we're approaching 6 months of live operations. Wait, let me think about that. May, June, July, August, September. Okay, we're past 6 months of live operations on this game. And I'm going to be going into a lot of detail around all of the design systems, tuning changes, that we made and how it affected positively the game economy and things of that nature. And so again, there's like very few titles that have really live operated with the economic depth that we have, and so it's been tough. It's been tough to, I think, pull inspiration from that. The benefit of these on-chain games is you can pull kind of all of their data and really kind of see how things are working. And so again, Dimension X, I would give a shout out to, as I think they've come up with a novel mechanism based on the seasons and how they're inflating NFT supply in a way that I think is really very compelling. I'm always interested if people see novel design mechanisms and things. I know people occasionally reach out to me and send me things, always hungry for content and, looking at competitors in the space to see what we might be able to do better.
All right. Okay, so that's our last question. Thank you so much for your time, Aron. By the way, I'm just going to make a small announcement. We'll have a couple of new faces in general chat because of our Coinbase partnership. And this is the best chance for us to show off our amazing community. So if you see a couple of confused people in chat, why not say hello and be friendly? If they ask a couple of repetitive questions, you can always bring up our FAQ about this event. Type !CBFAQ. I'm going to type it out right now in chat. .cbfaq to bring out our FAQ for the Coinbase event. So yeah, just play nice, community. That concludes our weekly town hall number 19. We'll see you next week for our weekly town hall number 20. In between that, there's so many things that are going to happen, so please make sure to keep your eyes peeled and prepare your questions. We'll post a recording of this town hall on our socials if you would like to give it a re-listen. Don't forget to share this with your friends and fellow Unicorn fam who couldn't make it. And if you have more burning questions, feel free to reach out on our support channels, the Mod Support channel and the Ask the Devs channel. This has been Sparkly Unicorn with co-host Witty Unicorn. Good morning, good night, and see you in-game, Unicorn fam.
Ooh woo.
Ooh woo.
Bye all.
Thanks, everybody.